Walk into a barn on a still hot afternoon in the middle of August, and the first thing that meets you is not the smell, and it is not the heat. It is the sound, that low, restless hum that seems to rise up out of the walls themselves. You look at the window and the glass is near black with them. You look at the backs of the cattle and they are twitching and stamping and swishing their tails without rest, trying to shake off a torment that never lets up. The old milk cow will not stand still to be milked. The horse in the corner is pawing the floor, and every time you open your mouth to say a word, you had best be quick about shutting it again. Flies. Thousands of them, tens of thousands, turning a good clean barn into a misery for you and for every creature that has to live in it. Now, most folks fight this the way the farm store would like them to. A can of fly spray, $8 or $10, empty in a week. The sticky ribbons you twist down from the rafters, $1 a piece, black and full in 2 days, and you hang a dozen more. The pour-on chemicals for the cattle's backs, the bags of little fly-eating wasps you mail off for month after month all summer long. $40 a season, $60, $100 every year, and still the barn hums, and still the animals suffer, and still you are swatting at your own supper. My name is Elias Yoder. I am Amish, and I farm here in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. And today I'm going to show you a thing that costs about $5 to put together out of what is very likely already sitting in your kitchen that will catch flies by the thousand, and that, used the right way at the right time of year, will break their hold on your barn for the whole of the season. It runs on no power. It needs no chemical from any company. And it works on the same plain truth about the fly that my grandfather knew and his grandfather before him. But I am going to be honest with you right at the start, the way I always am, because the title of this promises a great deal and you deserve the truth of it plain. When I say it keeps the flies out for good, I do not mean you will never see another fly as long as you live. Any man who tells you a $5 trick means you will never see a single fly again is selling you something and you should walk away from him. What I mean and what is true is this. For about $5 and a little attention at the right moment, you can knock the fly down from a black humming plague that torments your animals to a few stray nuisances you hardly notice, and you can hold it there season after season without ever buying another can of poison. That is what for good means here. Honest is better than impressive. Stay with me and I will show you the whole of it. To beat the fly, you have first to understand the fly, because everything about this trick depends on one fact that most folks never stop to think about. The fly you are swatting at is not the problem. The fly you are swatting at is the last and smallest part of the problem. Let me tell you what a fly really is. The common house fly and the barn fly live a short and busy life. A female fly, once she has mated, is looking for one thing and one thing only: a warm, moist place to lay her eggs. And a barn gives her 100 such places: a pile of manure, a wet patch of soil bedding, a heap of spilled, damp feed going sour in the corner, a rotting round bale, the muck along the bottom of a gutter. Anywhere warm and wet and full of rot, she will lay, and she does not lay a few. One female fly lays around 500 eggs in her short life, in batches of 100 or more at a time. Now, here is the part that ought to make you sit up. Those eggs do not take a season to become flies. In the heat of summer, an egg laid in warm manure hatches into a little maggot within a day. That maggot feeds and grows, and in a week to 10 days becomes a full-grown fly ready to breed again. Egg to fly in about a week. So one female laying 500 eggs becomes 500 flies in a week, and half of those are females who each lay 500 more the week after, and so on all summer long. The arithmetic of it is enough to frighten a man. From one pair of flies in the spring, if not a single one were checked, you would have millions upon millions by the end of summer. That is why the barn goes from a few flies in May to a black cloud by August. It is not that the flies came in from outside. It is that they were born and born and born again right there in your barn in the muck, generation on top of generation. And this is the thing the fly spray companies would just as soon you never understood, because once you understand it, their whole business looks foolish. When you spray a cloud of flies or hang a strip or swat the ones on the window, what are you killing? You are killing the grown flies, the ones already hatched, already flying, most of them already having laid their eggs. You are cutting the top off the weed and leaving the whole root in the ground. Behind every fly you kill on the window, there are 100 more eggs and maggots down in the bedding, coming up behind it, ready to take its place before the week is out. You could spray every single flying fly in that barn dead tonight, and in 10 days you would be right back where you started because the next generation was already in the manure, waiting. That is why the spraying never ends. That is why the bill never ends. You are fighting the wrong half of the fly. So the whole secret, the whole of it is this: do not fight the flying fly, fight the breeding fly, catch the females before they lay, and break the maggot's cradle so the young cannot come up. Do those two things cheaply at the right time, and the black cloud simply never builds. That is what our $5 trick does, and I am going to show you both halves of it now. Let me give you the trick itself first because it is simple, and once you have it, the rest makes plain sense. It is a trap, not the sticky ribbon, not the poison, but an old, honest, fermenting trap that draws the flies in by the thousand and gives them no way back out. And you build it out of a jug you already have and about $5 of the plainest things there are. Here is what you need. 1, a container, an old milk jug, a plastic pail with a lid, a large soda bottle, a coffee can, anything that holds water and that you can put a cover over. You have one. It costs you nothing. 2, sugar, plain white sugar, a cup of it, and a bag of sugar is $1 or $2 and lasts you all season. 3, and this is the heart of it, something to make it ferment and rot and stink, because a fly is drawn to the smell of rot the way you're drawn to the smell of bread baking. The cheapest way is a packet of ordinary baking yeast, 50 cents at the grocery, the same yeast your wife makes bread with. Yeast eats sugar and gives off a gas, carbon dioxide, and a sour, beery, fermenting smell, and that gas and that smell are exactly what a fly reads as a warm, rotting place to lay her eggs. You can do the same with a splash of cheap vinegar and a few pieces of overripe fruit, a banana peel going brown, the scrapings from a melon, a little sour milk, a scrap of raw meat if you want the big biting barn flies. Rot is the bait. 4, a little water to fill it, and that is the whole shopping list. A jug you own, a cup of sugar, a packet of yeast, or a handful of kitchen scraps, some water. $5 would buy you enough to bait traps for the whole farm and have change left over. Here's how you build it, and it takes about 10 minutes. Take your jug and fill it 1/3 of the way with warm water. Stir in your cup of sugar until it dissolves. Sprinkle in the packet of yeast or drop in your rotting fruit and your splash of vinegar. Give it a stir. Now, the important part, the part that makes it a trap and not just a smelly bucket. The flies must be able to get in easily and find it near impossible to get back out. If you're using a soda bottle, you cut the top third off, turn it upside down like a funnel, and set it back into the bottom so the flies crawl down the narrow neck into the bait and cannot find the little hole to climb back out. If you're using a pail or a jug, you put a lid on it and cut or drill a few holes in the top about the size of your finger, up near the top edge, not down low. A fly will crawl in through a hole toward a smell without trouble. But once she is inside, full of bait and heavy, she flies up toward the light and beats against the lid and never thinks to go back down and out the little hole she came in. She tires, she falls, she drowns in the bait. That is the whole mechanism. Easy in, hard out. Bait below, holes up high. Now let me tell you why this works when a sticky strip barely makes a dent, because the difference is everything. A sticky strip just hangs there and catches whatever happens to blunder into it, but this trap does not wait to be blundered into, it calls. That fermenting yeast is throwing off carbon dioxide, the very gas a warm body and a fresh pile of manure give off, and it is throwing off the sour smell of rot. And together those two things reach out on the air and pull flies in from clear across the barn and from outside it too. A fly can smell this from a good distance and comes to it on purpose, thinking she has found the finest place in the county to lay her eggs. And here's the part that makes it break the cycle. The fly, most powerfully drawn to a warm, rotting, egg-laying smell, is the pregnant female looking for a nursery. So this trap catches, above all others, the very flies that are about to lay the next 500 eggs. Every female you drown in that jug is 500 flies that are never born. Kill one breeding female in June, and you have wiped out a whole family tree that would have blackened your window in August. That is the leverage of it. That is why a $5 jug beats $100 of spray. The spray kills the grown fly at the end of its life. The trap kills the mother before the next generation begins. Now, where you put it matters as much as what is in it. So listen close to this part, because folks get it wrong and then wonder why it did not work. The first rule, and it surprises people, is do not hang your traps in the middle of the barn where you and the animals are. If you set a strong smelling fly trap right over the milking stall, all you have done is call every fly in the township to come and gather right where you are working. You will have more flies on you, not fewer. Instead, you set the traps around the outside, on the sunny side of the barn, 10 or 15 or 20 feet away from the doors and the animals, out along the perimeter. You want to draw the flies away from the barn, out to the traps, and drown them out there before they ever come in. Think of it as a fence of smell around your barn that catches them on their way in. The second rule, put them in the sun. The warmth makes the bait ferment harder and smell stronger, and flies are most active in the warm sun. A trap in the cool shade works half as well. The third rule, get them up off the ground a little, hung on a fence post or a nail on the sunny wall, about waist to chest high where the flies are cruising. And the fourth rule, more small traps spread around beat one big trap in one spot. 4 jugs around the 4 corners of the barnyard will outcatch one great barrel by the door every time, because you're catching flies coming from every direction. And now the most important word of all, the word that turns this from a trick that helps into a trick that keeps the flies out for good, and that word is timing. Here is the mistake near everyone makes. They wait until August, until the barn is already black and humming and the misery is at its worst, and only then do they hang a trap, and the trap catches flies a jug full every few days, and it helps, but it is bailing a boat that is already half sunk, because by August there are millions of them, and your one jug is catching thousands. It is too late to win. You can only fight to a draw. The secret, the whole secret of For Good, is to hang your traps early in the spring, at the very first warm days when you see the first few flies waking up and starting to buzz at the window. Those first flies of spring are the breeding stock of the entire summer. They are the great-great-grandmothers of the August plague. There are only a handful of them, and everyone you catch in April and May is 100,000 you will never have to fight in August. Catch the founders, and the colony is never built. So you hang your cheap jugs the very first warm week when there is hardly a fly to be seen, and you keep them baited through the spring, and you break the fly's grip before it ever forms. That is the difference between a trap that helps a little and a trick that clears a barn for the season. Early and cheap beats late and desperate every time. Now I promised you 2 halves, and the trap is only the first. The second half is the one the old people never had to be told, because they lived close to their animals and they saw it plainly, and it is this. The fly is born in the muck. So if you take away the muck, you take away the fly at its cradle, and your traps have almost nothing left to do. This costs you nothing but a little labor, and it is the other half of For Good. Keep the bedding dry, because the fly cannot breed in dry material, only in warm, wet rot. A barn kept dry with fresh, dry straw or shavings and the wet spots cleaned out is a barn where the eggs cannot hatch. Clean the manure out on a schedule at least twice a week in the heat, More if you can, because the fly needs about a week to go from egg to grown fly. So if you clear the manure and spread it thin to dry every few days, you are throwing out the maggots before they ever become flies. Spread the manure thin in the field where the sun and air dry it out fast, rather than leaving it in a warm, wet heap that is nothing but a fly factory. Fix the leaking waterer and the wet low spot where the muck stays soft. Clean up the spilled feed before it sours. Do that along with your cheap traps hung early, and the fly simply has nowhere to be born and nowhere to breed, and the black cloud of August never gathers. The trap catches the few that wander in. The clean, dry barn keeps the millions from ever being born. Together for $5 and a fork and a wheelbarrow, they do what $100 of chemical never could. Let me be honest now about the limits, because I will not have you build this and then feel I misled you. This is for the common barn and housefly, the ones that breed in manure and rot. It works wonderfully on them. It is not aimed at every biting thing in the world, and a single trap has its reach. One jug pulls flies from a good area around it, but it will not clear 40 acres by itself. You match the number of traps to the size of the place, a few for a small barn, more spread around for a big spread, and the bait wears out. After a week or two, it stops fermenting and stops smelling and just becomes a jug of dead flies, and a fly will not come to a dead trap. So you empty it, and this is the honest, ugly part. A jug of rotted bait and drowned flies smells about as bad as anything on this earth. And you must dump it out downwind, well away from the house, and rinse the jug and bait it fresh every week or two through the season. It is a small, unpleasant chore, but it is a few minutes and a cup of sugar against a summer of torment, and I know which trade I would make. A few plain words on safety, because there always are some. The bait itself, sugar and yeast, is nothing dangerous, but a jug of it left open where a child or a dog or a barn cat can get into it and drink is a foul thing to swallow, and if you have baited it with meat gone bad, all the worse. So keep the traps up off the ground, out of the reach of the little ones and the animals, hung on a post or a nail, closed except for the fly holes. Do not set them where your food or your milk is handled, for the plain reason that you do not want that smell or those flies gathering near where you eat and milk. Out and away, on the perimeter, high up. And if you use the meat bait for the big flies, be the more careful with it, because rotting meat draws more than flies and can grow a real sickness. For most folks, the sugar and yeast is plenty, and it is the cleaner choice, and a common mistake or two, so you do not have to learn them the hard way. Do not make the entry holes too big, or the flies find their way back out and you have made a feeding station instead of a trap. Finger-sized holes up high, no bigger. Do not set the trap in the shade and wonder why it is quiet. It wants the sun. Do not hang it right over your head and then curse the flies gathering there. Put it out and away. Do not wait for August. Hang it in April. And do not throw good money at the flying flies with sprays while leaving the wet manure sitting there breeding 1,000 more. That is pouring water in a bucket with the bottom rusted out. Trap early, keep it clean, keep it dry. That is the whole of it. Now I want to take a moment, because this is the part that matters, and it is bigger than a jug of sugar water. Think about what the whole fly control business really sells you. It sells you the can of spray that kills the fly on the window and leaves the 1,000 eggs in the bedding, so that you are back at the farm store next week for another can. It sells you the sticky strip that fills up in 2 days. It sells you the pour-on and the monthly bag of wasps and the bug zapper and the whole shelf of it. And every single one of those things is built to be bought again. And here is the quiet truth of it. There is no money in teaching a man that the flies born in his own wet manure and that a cup of sugar and a clean barn will beat it. You cannot put a brand on a clean, dry barn. You cannot sell a monthly subscription to a jug he baits himself for a nickel. You cannot advertise a fork and a wheelbarrow, so nobody does. Nobody runs a commercial telling you the real secret is the manure pile and the timing and the $5 jug, because there is not a dime in it for anybody. And so a whole country of people stands in their barns every August, swatting and cursing and spraying, buying the same can over and over, when their own great-grandfathers kept the flies down for the price of a cup of sugar and a little honest labor, and thought nothing of it. My people never lost this because we never had a fly spray budget and never wanted one. We keep the barn clean because a clean barn is a healthy barn, and we hang the traps early because we were shown to, and we spread the manure thin to dry because that is just how it is done, and so the flies never get the upper hand and it costs us next to nothing. It is not that we are clever, it is that we never stopped doing the plain, cheap, sensible thing, and never let ourselves be talked into believing the answer had to come in a can from a store. A man who can keep the flies out of his own barn with a jug and a fork is a man who owes the fly spray company nothing, and there is a freedom in that worth more than the few dollars it saves. So here is what I want you to do, and do not wait for the barn to go black to do it. This very week, if it is warm, or the first warm week of spring if it is not, take an old jug or a soda bottle, put a cup of sugar and a packet of yeast and some warm water in it, cut or drill your finger-sized holes up high, or set your funnel and hang 3 or 4 of them around the sunny side of your barn, out and away from the doors, up off the ground where the sun will keep them working. Then take your fork and clean the wet manure and the sour bedding out twice a week and spread it thin in the field to dry. Empty and rebait the traps every week or two, downwind and away from the house. Do that from the first warm days and watch what your barn is like come August. I think you will be surprised, and I think your animals will thank you for it in the only way they can, by standing quiet and content instead of stamping and suffering through the heat. Tell me in the comments below, how bad do the flies get in your barn come the height of summer, and what have you been spending to fight them? The sprays, the strips, the wasps, all of it added up for a year. And if your father or your grandfather had an old trap or an old trick for the barn flies, a bait, a plant they hung, a way they kept the barn, I want to hear it, because those old ways are the very knowledge I'm trying to keep alive here, and you all teach each other more in those comments than I ever could. I read every single one. Next time, since we have been speaking of keeping the barn healthy, I'm going to show you the old way my people keep the barn cool and sweet aired through the worst of the summer heat, the way it is built and vented so the air moves on its own and the animals stay comfortable with no fan and no power at all. It is the natural next step after today. Until then, hang your jug early, keep your barn dry, waste nothing, and remember, the people who built this country with their hands knew things we are only just starting to remember.